Alright, people, what's up? What's up? It's your boy Knowledge with the Knowledge Universally Alkaline. Um, Today we're gonna talk about something that it's kind of close to me. You know what I'm saying? I got friends who have kids who have to deal with it and things of that nature. Pretty much, we're gonna talk about autism, or what is known as Autism Spectrum Disorder. Um, First thing first, it's not a disease. I'm gonna tell you that now. It's not a disease. Straight up. Alright, there we go. They wanted to focus on Africa and not me. uh very little is understood about this developmental brain disorder. Um Autism is also sometimes called classical autism. But it's the most common condition in a group of developmental disorders, known as the Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ADS, or ASD. I'm sorry, ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. Autism is characterized by impaired social interaction, problems with verbal and nonverbal communication, and unusual, repetitive, or severely limited activities and interests. Pretty much meaning that, like, as a child develops and they go to school and it's supposed to become more social and interactive, there are those who aren't as social, or doesn't speak until like later on in life, or doesn't develop speech patterns until later on, versus how other children develop speech patterns, or they have these things, like, they do like noises or rocking back and forth, or they're into certain things, but autistic individuals are infected by the disorders. The variation, it widely vary. I'm getting tongue tied. How autistic individuals are affected by the disorder varies widely. It's kind of hard for me to talk about this because, like, I know a lot of people who are artistic, so it's like this is something kind of close to me. So bear with me. In fact, the variety of autistic-like disorders has necessitated the creation of the term Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, to be used instead of the older term autism, which really describes only the most severe form of the disorder. Other ASDs include Asperger's syndrome, Rett syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, and persuasive development disorder, or persuasive developmental disorder. Not otherwise specified. Boy, my words is off today. Usually referred to as PPD-NOS. But people with severe cases display self-injuries, they're aggressive, and they have unusual behaviors. The milder forms may appear, at least to the layperson, to be like personality disorder, possibly associated with a learning disability. Experts, they estimate that only 3 to 6 children out of every 1,000 will have autism, and it affects approximately 1 out of every 150 children in the United States, according to the CDC, the Center of Disease Control. I think those numbers, I think it's like 1 in like 75. Because I remember looking at the timeline of autism from the time it like fluctuated up in the 70s, and it increased through the 80s, 90s, and even into these 2000s and 2010s. But the researchers estimate that as many as 560,000 individuals in the United States between the ages of 0 and 20 have some form of ASD. And I mean, even with 50 years of research into the varying manifestations of autism and ASD, the families affected by it, the disorder continues to mystify doctors, psychologists, and scientists. It's clear that more children than ever before are being classified as having autism spectrum disorders, but it's unclear how much of this increase is due to changes in how we identify and classify ASD in people, and how much of it is due to a true increase in prevalence. Males, they are 3 times likely to have this disorder than females, with recent studies suggesting that people have a genetic predisposition to ASD. It's also estimated that families with one child with ASD have a 2 to 8% chance of having a second child with some form of ASD. Someone with ASD might first appear to be like mentally retarded or hard of hearing, and I've noticed that in kids, not the mentally retarded side, but like hard of hearing, and I believe that also has an effect on the speech development, because they're not hearing those words to process those words, to start regurgitating those words back out and learning those speech patterns and characteristics. But caregivers stress that it's important to distinguish ASD from other conditions. Physically, individuals with ASD do not appear different from others, but exhibit marked differences in behavior from an early age. ASD is usually diagnosed in early childhood before the age of 3. It's also characterized by marked unresponsiveness to other people and the surrounding environment. While most babies love to be held and cuddled, infants with ASD may appear indifferent to love and affection, or may be overly agitated, crying most of the time when they're awake. Children with ASD may not be able to form attachments to others in the way most children do, and seem to withdraw within to themselves. Many exhibit various unpredictable and unusual behaviors that can range from a constant rocking, the pounding of the feet, or sitting for long periods of time in just total silence. And those of y'all are parents and then went through that baby stage. What's the scariest thing? A silent 1-year-old. So that's something to pay attention to. Also, some experience bursts of hyperactivity that include like biting or pounding their bodies, and causing some kind of physical harm to themselves. But according to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, the criteria used to diagnose ASD include the following: absence or an impairment of imaginative or social play, the impaired ability to make friends with peers. That's that social thing I was talking about earlier. Stereotyped or repetitive or unusual use of language, restricted patterns of interest that are abnormal in intensity or focus, the apparent inflexibility with regard to changes in routine or rituals. Like, if anyone been around kids who have ASD, autism, however you want to term it, they end up developing their own routine, and certain things they're going to form a liking to. And if it's changed or altered or taken away, oh yeah, you talking about a full-blown tantrum and shit like that, yeah. Or they have a preoccupation with parts of objects, Like some can be touchy feely, some can be into like they don't like for their little personal things to be touched, like things like that. Um, Many children with ASD have learning disabilities and are often mentally disabled. Speech development is usually delayed in many cases and is absent or limited to nonsensical rhyming and babbling. Um, there are some children with ASD that appear to have a lower than normal intelligence. Others seems to fall in the normal range, while some are highly intelligent. Like I've met kids that are like, you talking about me being smart? I've had conversation with 5 and 6 year old kids who have autism, and we could talk about universal physics and metaphysics and Darwin's theory and the breakdown of Einstein's theory of relativity, and they completely understand and can carry on that conversation. It's quite awesome. Unlike those with other ASDs, children with Asperger's syndrome typically don't have problems with language or a intellectual disability. But to be accurately diagnosed with ASD, a child must be observed by a skilled professional because diagnosis is very difficult for a practitioner with limited training and exposure to children who have ASD. Individuals diagnosed as autistic savants attract a great deal of attention from the media and general public. Many movies, television reports, and newspaper articles highlight the extraordinary skills of these individuals, most particularly in the areas of mathematics, arts, music, and memory. So, like, if you ever seen Rain Man, I'm kind of telling my age. I'm 36 going on 37. Rain Man is about a guy who was autistic, very good with numbers. A guy took advantage of him, took him to the casino, because the guy he taught the guy how to count cards, and like they racked up on the money. So like he kind of used the guy in a sense, in a bad way for like a monetary gain. Some of your favorite artists and musicians are autistic. Beethoven was one. Some of them have a hellified memory. Like I remember going to church with a guy named Eric. And like Eric had the fucking phone book memorized. I'm talking about will walk up to you, tell you your name, tell you your phone number, tell you your address, and walk off. Like he was just a walking data bank, you know what I'm saying? And like a lot of people didn't like cling to him or understood him. They thought he was weird. I embraced the dude, and we've had some pretty deep conversations. Such an individual might, for example, be able to multiply and divide large numbers or calculate square roots with little hesitation. Or they can paint like Rembrandt. You know what I'm saying? Without even having no proper training. You know what I'm saying? I've seen kids pick up drawing pencils, utensils, sketch pads, canvases, and just fluid. Just, that's their thing. Those are outlets. Feed outlets. Those will keep them calm. You know what I'm saying? You're giving them something to do, giving them something to be productive in. Or they can, like I say with my friend Eric, memorize the entire phone book. Or be capable of reciting the birth date of every person he or she has ever met. Like I say, they can be walking data banks, like just a big old walking hard drive, a big old processor. But less than 1% of the general population is capable of such feats, though. Outside of the ones that have ASD. But the incidence of such abilities is 10% in the individuals who are artistic. No one knows why it occurs like that. Some speculate that autistic people have an incredible set of concentration abilities, like just razor sharp focus in certain things. They can focus complete attention on a specific area of interest. Like I know one kid, like I'm good at mechanics. Like I can break down a motor and rebuild it within a day if I got the time. Like I've seen kids come into my garage and do the same exact thing and have never picked up a fucking tool in their life. But they've helped me put in cams, break down heads, all that. The cause of it is unknown. Some believe that it's a result of a neurological imbalance or a malfunction that pretty much renders the autistic individual painfully oversensitive to external stimuli. Like, I know some kids, like, they can't take certain frequencies, they can't deal with certain sounds or certain kinds of music, because it resonates at too high of a frequency for them. Researchers believe that ASD may be the results of genetics or some environmental factors such as viruses or chemicals. And since here's where I think it comes from, and a lot of people are going to disagree. Some are, some aren't. I believe vaccinations have a play in that, because there are metals that are in these vaccinations. There are chemicals in these vaccinations that the body cannot process, and it is lodged within your brain stems, your nervous system, and it blocks off receptors that need to be firing on all cylinders. But they've been studying how brain function differs in autistic individuals. There are theories that suggest that brain development may have been interrupted in the early fetal stages in people who develop ASD. Other studies reveal that possible signaling problems within the brain. It is known that ASD is not caused by parental neglect or the actions as once believed. Like, back in the day, you used to think, like, you dropped your kid on your head too many times, or shit like that. At one time, there was a concern that there was a link between MMR, which is the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, or the vaccine preservative thimerosal, which is ethanol mercury, those metals I was speaking of that the body can't absorb and digest, and they get lodged and stuck inside you. And the onset of ASD. There's a report that came out back in like May of 2004 by the Institute of Medicine, IOM, that the Immunization Safety Review Committee concluded that there is no such link. I doubt it. I disagree. A group in Denmark found the same thing. But it must be noted that the National Autism Association disagrees to this day and believes that there are some type of link. Whatever the truth may be, but since 1999, drug companies have removed or reduced significantly the amount of thimerosal in their vaccines, just as a precautionary measure. Another precautionary measure, when you're getting your kids vaccinated, research these vaccinations that these kids are being given, because these doses are just too ridiculously heavy to begin with, and it's just too much for a child to be intaking, and their bodies absorb and all that, and you still have things like their immune system and central nervous system and things like that developing outside of being outside of the womb. Whether to vaccinate your child is a very personal decision. So, like I say, research vaccinations. Research what is going into your child and how that may or may not, well, not even may not, how it may interfere with the development of your child mentally. You need to weigh the unknown risks, you know what I'm saying, you need to weigh the unknown risk against the risk of contracting any communicable diseases covered by the vaccinations. In addition, most public schools will not allow children who haven't been immunized to attend school, which is a sucky thing, because they think that a child's not vaccinated, they're just like a walking petri dish of disease and pestilence and shit like that. Like, it's very sad that they get treated that way. In some communities, you could petition to allow your child to enter school without immunization. So you would have to do your research into that. I know California is one. Research is still ongoing to try and find the biological basis for ASD. The emergence of brain imaging tools such as computerized tomography, or what's called a CAT scan, um, positron emission tomography, or what's called PET, single photon emission computerized tomography, which is called SPECT, and magnetic resonance imaging, or what is called the MRI. Has allowed researchers to examine in detail portions of the brain never seen before in living people, because like they couldn't do it unless the person died, and then they had to dissect your brain into little itty bitty thin slices like lunch meat, and then study those parts under a microscope. But it's allowing them to examine in detail. But in fact, instead of being able to single out one area of the brain that is affected, it looks as if many major brain structures are implicated in ASD. They include the cerebellum, the cerebral cortex, the lymphatic system, the corpus callosum. Okay, let me get it right. Corpus callosum, the basal ganglia, and the brainstem. Like I say, those metals from those vaccines, that's where they go, and they don't digest, and they just deposit themselves there. And like I say, end up blocking receptors that need to be firing, that screws up your wiring. Other researchers found, other researchers focus on neurotransmitters, like I just said, like serotonin, dopamine, and epinephrine. But evidence now points to a genetic factors. That's what the evidence points to as the cause of ASD. There's a theory that has been strengthened by twin and family studies, such as the underlying genetic vulnerability. But recent neuroimaging studies shown that abnormal brain development beginning in an infant's first months appears to be the contributing cause. This has resulted in a growth dysregulation hypothesis that holds genetic defects in the brain growth factors to be responsible. Okay, so yeah, to the herbal side of things, you can give them things like ginkgo biloba, which is a powerful free radical. It's a free radical destroyer, matter of fact, that protects the brain. It also improves brain function by increasing the circulation within the brain itself. You could take it in capsules or the extract form as directed on the label at least 3 times daily. But caution, don't take ginkgo biloba if you have a bleeding disorder, or you are scheduled for surgery, or you have a dental procedure. Recommendations as far as from the food standpoint of it: high fiber diets consisting of 50 to 75% raw food, including large amounts of fruits, vegetables, brown rice, lentils, potatoes. On your protein side, beans, legumes, fish, raw nuts, seeds, skinless white turkey, or white chicken breast. Tofu is good. Low-fat yogurt. Kids love yogurt, so like yogurt, that low-fat yogurt should be number 1 on the list. Not that Go-Gurt shit with all the sugar and shit, but some low-fat yogurt. Yeah. As they grow, eliminate alcohol, caffeine, canned and packaged foods, carbonated beverages, chocolate, pretty much all junk food, refined and processed food, salt, sugar, sweets, saturated fats, soft drinks, white flour. Like, take it out their diet, even as a child, because if you start them young, that will carry with them as they grow. So when we are dead and gone, they are still able to function and do for themselves. You got to start it early. Avoid fried fatty foods like bacon, cold cuts, gravy, ham, lunch meats, sausage, pretty much all your dairy, except for low-fat, sour products. Take wheat and wheat products out of the diet, like I said. Have them drink steam distilled water, or what is otherwise known as vapor distilled water. Have them, regular exercise is key. As they're young, when you're trying to figure out their diet, because it can vary between each child that deals with ASD, you're going to have to use the elimination diet to test out for food allergies, which can aggravate their conditions. To improve blood oxygen supply to the brain, deep breathing exercises, or get your kids into yoga or teach them breathing techniques. Hold your breath for 30 seconds, each half an hour for a 30-day period. It promotes deeper breathing and helps increase the oxygen levels to the brain. Don't go without food. Eating frequent smaller meals daily is better than eating 1 or 2 or 3 large meals a day. Considerations. I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm about 10 more minutes. In the medical sense, there's no cure for the differences in the brain that result in ASD, but researchers are finding better ways to understand the disorder and help people cope with various symptoms. And some of those symptoms can lessen as the child ages, and others may disappear altogether. But with appropriate intervention, many behaviors can be changed for the better, even to the point that the affected individual may, to the untrained eye, seem perfectly normal. And I've ran across some that are normal. You can't even tell unless you sit around them long enough, and like they'll start rocking, or it's a particular noise or frequency, and they'll do this, so they'll cover their ears because the frequency is so intense, like it's ringing. Or some autistic kids, they have to have tubes put into their ears earlier in childhood life. But like I say, they may seem perfectly normal, and the majority of people with ASD continue to display some kind of symptom throughout their life. Whether they stay at one level or they progress to get better, they're still going to have some kind of symptom, some kind of trigger, some kind of mechanism that carries with them. Puberty. It can be difficult for an autistic child, and they end up experiencing frequent or severe behavior problems. About 25% of those affected begin to experience seizures during puberty. It's believed to be the result of hormonal changes. In adulthood, appropriate living arrangements for people with ASD vary depending on the severity of their case. While those who are mildly affected may be able to live on their own, other options can include living in a group home or a residential home, or living with their parents. For those who are severely affected, an institutional setting may be the best choice, or the only choice. While some autistic adults are unable to adapt to a regular lifestyle, others graduate from college, have careers, form relationships, and marry. Like, I'm gonna tell you one who's autistic. I can't remember what form of autism he has, but Steven Spielberg. Yeah, not Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. My bad. That's who it is. Yeah, guy who created Star Wars. You gotta have a hell of an imagination to create that shit. Correct me if I'm wrong, because it's one of those two guys. Last time I remember from a documentary that I was watching. Allergies and food sensitivities are beginning to receive a lot more attention when it comes to dealing with individuals with ASD, because of the research and case studies that they're beginning to suggest that they contribute to certain behaviors. But as I say, you are what you eat. 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 So you got to watch what you eat. Yeah. Researchers detected the presence of abnormal protein levels in the urine of autistic individuals. It's thought that this protein may be due to the body's inability to break down certain dietary proteins into amino acids. Um, these break down. Where was I at? Oh yeah, the proteins are gluten, which is found in wheat, barley, oats, and other foods, and casein, found in human and cow's milk. However, some tend to argue that not all cow's milk is potentially harmful. Um, Over in New Zealand, milk from a certain breed of cow with genetic makeup called A2 seems to not exacerbate symptoms of autism. Many parents of autism children have removed these foods from their children's diet and have in many cases observed positive changes in health because of that, and changes in their behavior, like positive changes in their behavior by eliminating that. There's research that strongly suggests that many autistic people are sensitive to dairy products and certain foods eaten most of the time, eaten often in the spring and summer. These foods include strawberries, citrus fruits, which can cause autistic individuals' sensitive immune system. It can affect their sensitive immune system. My bad. Doctors noted a variety of problems, including headaches, nausea, bedwetting, appearing spaced out, stuttering, excessive whining, crying, signs of aggression, depression, and it can only be magnified by these food products. So if you're dealing with an autistic child, you really got to fine tune their diet as they grow. A lot of autistic kids have benefited from a ketogenic diet, pretty much, which is a diet high in fat and nearly devoid of carbohydrates. Children may benefit from taking vitamin B6 as well, and magnesium, as well as other nutrients vital to biochemical reactions within the body. Elevated serum and tissue copper levels may be a factor in autism and other mental problems, as may excessive exposure to lead and mercury. Even low-level lead exposure in young children have been associated with impaired intellectual development and behavior problems. Children 5 to 17 with autism benefited from 1.5 grams a day of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA in an equal ratio. And after 6 weeks, the behavior improved, for self-injuries and aggression and tantrums that they tend to occur. You're going to hear me talk about them omega-3s and omega-6s a lot, right along with the salmon that I done spoke of in like my last 2-3 videos. Goes a long way. Infants and toddlers who diets consisted largely of processed baby foods need supplemental vitamins and minerals. The prognosis for autistic children is difficult to predict. There's been documented cases of a parent recovered from autism, usually after adolescence. Pretty much some children can grow out of it. Some children seem to progress well, only to inexplicably regress back to a former state. Many become marginally self-sufficient and independent. However, most autistic individuals ultimately will end up needing lifelong care of some type. But real talk, before I end it, don't ever look at your child having autism as a bad thing. It could be a gift and a curse. You just have to learn what outlets your child are into and feed that outlet. Nurture that outlet. If they're into a certain thing, like I said, I know kids who are into mechanics. I know kids who are into physics. And when I say kids, I mean kids 3, 4, 5, 6 freaking years old. that are into stuff like this that most of us don't get into until we're willing to be an adult. So feed the need, but also kids are like a computer, and you got to program that software, and you got to put the right set of ones and zeros of that binary code into that child so it can process and carry out correctly. So don't beat yourself up if your child has autism. It's something you're gonna have to learn, and you'll overcome, and that child can still live life and be normal, in a sense. You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna use the word normal, but you know what I'm saying, they can function and be a functioning member of society. So even though autism can be a bad and debilitating thing, like everything else, it's what you make of it, especially with raising a child that suffers from some form of ASD. You got to have time, and you got to have patience, and you got to have a hell of a lot of love, man. Because like my friends who have autistic children, they are some of the best fucking parents in the world. No disrespect to the other parents, but they are just so fucking awesome with the way they take the time out with their children, and this condition that their children have. I gotta go. I love talking to y'all today. Catch me YouTube, like, subscribe, Facebook, Universal Alkaline, Kindle Blunt, or Kindle Control My Universe Blunt, or Kindle Knowledge Blunt. But I'm out. I love y'all. Until the next video, I'll see y'all later.